We are Life Church Livonia.
Okay, Life Church Livonia, how is everyone? One person is good. It's always one person, but it's a different person every week that's good. And so I'm looking forward to the day when all of you are fantastic. And so one of these days that will come. Well, hey, my name's Brian. I'm the pastor here at Life Church Livonia. I'm so grateful that you chose to come and spend your Sunday morning with us. And we are right in the middle of a series called Address the Mess. And this has been a fantastic series for all of us. I think really to come to a place where we understand that we all of us, all of humanity, have at least one thing in common. And that thing that all of us have in common, I'm sure there's more than one thing that we all have in common, but at least this one thing is is that all of us have messes in our life. Every single one of us. No matter who you are, no matter whether you grew up in an ideal family, in a fantastic situation, in what you could only describe as like the perfect childhood, or you grew up in an awful childhood that you wouldn't wish on anyone. Whether you are in your dream career or you're not in a career at all right now because you're jobless. So whether you're married or unmarried, whether you have kids or no kids, no matter who you are, you have mess in your life at some place. Either you had it, or you're in it, or you're about to step in it. That's the way it works in life, right? And the messes come in all shapes and sizes. We have emotional messes, relational messes, financial messes. We have messes that are having to do with our heart and our spirituality. And these messes are something we just want to admit to say, yes, we have them. Because the first step to actually engaging our mess in a way that actually is transformative is understanding that it's true, that we have them, and to stop trying to spend all of our time pretending like they don't exist. And so that's why we've been doing this series, because we want to address the mess and just be real about it. As Jeff said earlier, we are a place where we say real people, real God, real life. Well, this is it. This is where we do our best work. This is where God does his best work in our life. And so this week, what we want to do is we want to address a common misperception about what it means to be a Christian. Whether you grew up in a context that maybe taught this in the church, or you've been looking at Christians from afar, watching Christians that maybe that are in your family or are around you, and you believe that this is true about Christianity, I want to address a common misperception that I think is actually a bit of a myth about what it means to be a Christian. Because many people believe this. They believe that being a Christian is all about mess avoidance. It's all about mess avoidance, meaning that you're living your life in such a way that you're trying to avoid trouble. You're trying to avoid staying out of mess. It's being a Christian is all about not doing wrong things. And that misses the heart of what it means to be a follower of Jesus. Because following Jesus isn't just about avoiding something, it's about becoming something. It's about becoming something. There's so much more than just a mess avoidance when it comes to the life of the believer. And so if you've been stuck in a space where you believe that this was true, or people have tried to teach you that this was true, it's just not. We don't see it in Scripture. Jesus doesn't say, get your act together and then come to me. He says, come to me and we will work on your mess together. And in fact, he takes it a step further and he says, come to me with your mess and I'll do the heaviest lifting when it comes to that mess. I'll do the hardest parts of that work, the parts of the work that you aren't capable of doing it. And so the first beautiful movement in our life when it comes to our messes is actually coming to Jesus and saying, here I am, mess and all. Here I am, me, stepping in it again. Stepping into those relationships, into those patterns, into those behaviors, into that emotional space again. Jesus, here I am. And when we do that, our mess doesn't keep Jesus away. He doesn't turn around and walk away because of your mess. Our mess is actually what draws Jesus near. Our mess is the reason that Jesus came onto this earth in the first place, was so that we could address the mess. And so you encounter Jesus, you give your life to Christ, and then do you spend the rest of your life trying to live into these patterns of mess avoidance? Do you step right back into that same old pattern? If so, you're living your life by the wrong equation. It's not the way that we were designed to live. And we can get really good at doing the right things, being around the right people. And in all of that activity of trying to be the kind of person that we believe we should be, we could miss the point. So I want to say it again. Our relationship with God is not about avoiding something. It's about becoming something. It's not about outside in behavior modification. It's about inside out life transformation. And that transformation starts here. Starts in our heart. At the core of who we are, at the space inside of each one of us that we long to meet God in. The place where we know that we struggle the most. So what I want to do is I want you to imagine if you had to pick one word to describe the state of your heart, to make like a State of the Union address about where your heart is right now, what would that one word be? This is not an opportunity to turn to your spouse and tell them what their heart is, right? Like, your heart is cold. No, this is not what we're about. But maybe your heart is kind of cold right now. Well, maybe if you were going to pick one word to describe where your heart is at, you would describe it as fragile. My heart is really fragile right now. Maybe it's something beautiful. Maybe your heart is joy-filled, filled with indescribable joy. That's how I felt when I first held Annika Hope. I'm not going to lie. I wish I had a baby to hold during my message. That's like not fair. Fills my heart, right? With joy. Maybe it's not joy that your heart is filled with. Maybe it's anxiety. It's anxiousness. Perhaps your heart is broken. Maybe it was broken, but now it's strong. Like your heart is in a really strong, like, yes, we're doing it. Life, internally and externally, God is doing something. My heart is in a strong, healthy, beautiful place. Maybe it's open for the first time. I don't know what you would use, you would use to describe your heart, but when we look into the scriptures, we go back into the prophets, into Jeremiah, and he uses a different word to describe our hearts that actually is concerning. But it's at the core of why we're talking about the mess. Jeremiah 17, verse 9 says this: "The heart is deceitful above all things, deceitful above all things and beyond cure. Who can understand it?" This is your encouraging word for the day, friends, okay? The heart is deceitful above all things. It is not the word that I would have picked for my heart. It's not the word that I think that really probably any of us would pick about our own heart. We might describe someone else's heart like that, but not our own heart. And you start digging into the scripture and you see this word that the original language was Hebrew. And in the original language, that word has been sometimes translated deceitful. And Hosea, in the book of Hosea, it gets translated stained. In the book of Isaiah, in one spot, it gets translated as rough ground. So think about what the author is saying here. That there's something off about our hearts. Deceitful, stained, rough. The kind of rough ground that nothing can really thrive in. And this is what Jeremiah says. He says, there's something at the core of who we are that is broken and beyond cure. Diseased and beyond cure. Who can understand it, he says? Who can understand our hearts? I certainly can't understand mine. If you wonder if that's true, just think back to a time when your heart betrayed you. When your head was convinced that something was true and you should do something, but your heart was like not cooperating. That's the deceitful heart that we can't understand. And not only can I not understand my heart, but I'll never be able to understand yours. And Jeremiah goes on in the next few verses to describe that God is the only one who fully gets our heart. God is the only one who fully understands why we act the way we act, we think the way that we think, and we feel the way that we feel. It's only God. Because our hearts are a mystery that only God can solve. They're a mystery that only God can solve. And not only are they a mystery that only God can solve, they're also stained, deceived, and broken in such a way that they can't be cured. And I think a lot of us, we struggle to believe that this is true about ourselves, but we have no trouble believing it's true about someone else. And if you're wrestling with this, if you're thinking to yourself, well, I don't know if this is true, this is what I would tell you to do. Watch the evening news for a week straight from beginning to end on multiple news channels, and then ask yourself the question, is there something wrong at the core of humanity? Yes, there is. Why do otherwise good people do such awful things? What's going on? What's happening inside of us? And so what we do then, we try to respond to that by either trying to manage it or control it. We try to manage it or we try to control it. And this is at the core of the mess that we've been talking about during this entire series. So if it's true, what's God going to do about it? Because we're not going to just stop on that bad news. This is not the moment when I say, okay, great Sunday, guys, let's go home. The heart is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. You're in trouble. Have a good day. No, we go further into the scriptures. We jump into another prophet's writing, Ezekiel. What does Ezekiel tell us that God wants to do about the heart? He says, this is God speaking. I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I will remove from you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. This is God responding to a specific situation with his people and his people that have a deceitful heart, a stained heart, a heart that is rough and hard and cold. And God says, I'm going to give you something brand new. I'm going to give you a heart replacement, a heart transplant. Because yeah, your heart's beyond cure, but I can fix it by giving you something brand new. And this is honestly some of the best news that you could ever hear about your situation, about what's going on deep inside of you. It is the best news. And to put it in context, think about a time when you needed something to be replaced, something to be exchanged, something to be returned. Think about that one item that you bought, you saved up money for, you invested time and energy to save for, and then you purchased it and it either wasn't what you hoped it would be or it broke. And what do? You go back to the store and you're like, listen, I know it was my fault that it's broken. I dropped it, but could I get a new one? And they're like, sorry, it doesn't work that way. Did you buy the insurance? Did you buy the extra protection plan? Well, no, I didn't think I would need it because it's important to me. Well, sorry, sir, you're stuck with a broken whatever. In that moment, a replacement would really be encouraging, wouldn't it? My son was super excited about buying a new set of pliers for fishing. Like really over the top. I can't even describe to you how excited he was about these new fishing pliers, okay? That's all he talked about. He got a gift card for Dick's Sporting Goods and finally we went online and picked out the perfect pair of fishing pliers. They were exactly or as close to daddy's as you could possibly get, right? And we ordered them and they didn't come. Nothing. Day after day, he would come home and he would get off the bus and run to the mailbox and look for the pliers and they were never there. The day came when they were supposed to arrive and nothing. The next day, the day after that, finally I called and Dick's Sporting Goods said, we sent them by a U.S. mail. And then I called the post office. And online it says they were delivered to my house. And I said, someone must have stolen my son's fishing pliers. And so the post office starts looking through their system and they realize that maybe our postal worker hadn't drank their coffee that day or something because they walked up to our doorstep, dropped them off, marked them as delivered, picked them back up and took them back out to their truck. And they were now circulating in this endless loop of misery in the postal service. Right. Gone. It's not Dick's Sporting Goods' fault, right? So what do? I pick up the phone and I call Dick's and I say, hey, I know this isn't your fault, but my son really, really is excited about these pliers. And they say, no problem, sir. I don't even need to hear your story. We're going to send you a replacement. Do you think that was good news for Antoine? Amazing good news. They came a few days later, a full replacement. Even though it wasn't their fault, they gave a replacement. God didn't do the actions that we do. He didn't cause the sin that we sin with. He didn't make us in such a way, design us to always have this stained heart. This is us. And he says, I'm going to give you a replacement. Fishing pliers are good news for an 8-year-old boy, but a new heart, when ours is broken, when it is diseased and beyond cure, is the best news. The best news that we could ever receive. It's beautiful. And because of that decision that we make to say, God, here's my heart, I need a new one. The decision we make to say, God, I'm in need of healing. I need you to heal me. And he does. That one decision takes care of a huge portion of the problem that we experience in our life. Takes care of a portion of the problem. And the good theologians in the room are saying, hold on, what do you mean a portion? Why would you say a portion? Are you saying that God's love and the heart transplant doesn't cover all our sin? Absolutely, it covers it all. All of our misdeeds, all the things we've done wrong. When we get a heart transplant from God, the forgiveness that we receive from God covers all of our struggle and our sin. We find forgiveness for all of our misdeeds. But listen, this is really important. Our mess is more than simply the mess that we made. Our mess is more than just a sin. The mess that exists in all of our lives is the sum total of the things that we have done, the things that have been done to us, and the collateral damage and the lingering effects of all of those things in our life. It's more than just the sins that we need to forgive and that God forgives us the moment that we accept Jesus. It's more than just that. We need freedom. We need freedom from the stained heart that comes through God's grace, and we need an opportunity to have our life remodeled around the Father's will for us. We need an opportunity to have our interior life and our exterior life remodeled into the form that God longs for us and calls us to be and do. And in order to do that, we need help. And so we jump back into Ezekiel again. And we read the passage we just read when he says, I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I will remove from you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. And God says, I will put my spirit in you. And I will put my spirit in you and move you. God himself will move you. God himself will move me to follow his decrees and to be careful to keep my laws. So what happens? God gives us a heart transplant. He forgives us for all those things. He cures our stained, broken, rough ground, deceitful heart. And then he says, I know you're going to struggle. I know you're going to struggle to do the next best thing. I know you're going to struggle to live into everything that I call you to do and be, but I will walk with you. I will put my spirit in you. We're not getting just a heart transplant. We're getting something else as well. The Spirit of God in whom we live and move and breathe and find life to the full. When I first came back to Jesus after a rough season in college, I remember, I honestly remember the heart transplant. I vividly remember it. But then I also remember a moment a few months later when I'm crying out to God in my prayer time because I'm still struggling to be the person I knew I was called to be, to live into this new life, this life remodeled. I remember crying out to God and saying, God, I can't do it. Like, I just can't. I don't know what's wrong with me, but I can't. Like, I'm trying to do the right things, but I keep messing up, and I keep stumbling in my walk, and I keep this behavior that I know I shouldn't do. I keep kind of finding myself drifting into, and the way that you call me to engage, to interact with people, I'm not always perfect at that. I'm really struggling to be filled with grace and love for all these people, and I just can't do it. And God says to me, I'll never forget, he said, I don't expect you to be able to do it. Not on your own. Who told you? Who told you that you had to do it on your own? Brian, who was it that told you that all I do in your life is forgive you and then leave you? No, Jesus says, I will never leave you nor forsake you. This is the good news, is that we're not alone in the process of our life being transformed. We're not alone in that process. God says, I want to transform you from the inside out. It's not just about mess avoidance. It's about intimacy with me. That's what God says to you. That's what God says to me. It's about intimacy with me. And there's nothing more intimate than the Spirit of the living God inside of you. This is what Jesus promised. Jesus promised us, he said, I'm about to go, but I won't leave you alone. I'm about to go, but I'm not going to leave you all alone to try to work this out. I'm going to leave my Spirit that now can live in you because you've been set free from the stained, broken, deceitful heart. I'm going to send my Spirit, the Spirit of God, so that you can live life to the full, so that you can become who I call you to be. And because of that good news of Jesus, because of what God did through his Son, Jesus Christ, now one decision can do more than take care of a portion of our past. Now one decision gives us the ability to overcome all of our past. The collateral damage too. The lingering effects as well. the things that we've done, the things that have been done to us, Jesus gives us not only forgiveness, but a pathway to healing, a pathway to fullness of life, where we can overcome the sum total of all the things we have done that have been done to us and the collateral damage and lingering effects of all of those things, all of that mess. It's what leads the Apostle Paul to write in 2 Corinthians chapter 3. He says this, "Now the Lord is the Spirit. And where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is" what? Freedom. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. And we all, who with unveiled faces contemplate the Lord's glory, are being transformed into his image with ever increasing glory, which comes from the Lord, who is the Spirit. How are our faces unveiled? They're unveiled because we've had a heart transplant. God has done the work. He's cured the thing that we could not cure on our own. Our stained, broken, deceitful heart. He's cured it, and our faces become unveiled. Our life becomes unveiled to where we can actually contemplate the Lord's glory. And his Spirit then is embedded into us, allowing us to be transformed every day with ever-increasing glory into the image of the person that God calls us to be and made us to be. And it all starts with a heart transplant, but it doesn't end with a heart transplant. The heart transplant is like chapter 1 of our life. It's the beginning point. And chapter 2 is what God does in us and through us after that. We have to remember that our relationship with God is not simply about avoiding something or getting the cure for something or getting forgiveness for something. It's about becoming something. Not only forgiveness, but healing. Not only forgiveness, but transformation. And I think that the Apostle Paul, who actually wrote those words in 2 Corinthians, I don't think he got this in his younger age. I think in his early years, he was all about mess avoidance. And not only was he about mess avoidance in his life, but he was about making sure that anyone else who had a mess was punished for their mess. He was about calling out the mess in other people. He thought that the early Christians had made a mess of Judaism. So he went after the early Christians. He actually killed them. And he held on to this faulty equation. This equation that says knowledge plus good decisions equals transformation. Paul believed that knowledge, knowing the right things, plus then adding the good decisions to that equals transformation. And so he actually went after Christians that he thought had skewed Judaism and were ruining everything by proclaiming a false Messiah. He went after them and he killed them because he thought they were making a mess. He'd bought into the wrong equation. But then he met Jesus. He met Jesus and he realized, I've got this equation backwards. It's not about knowledge plus good decisions equaling transformation. It's about identity plus belonging equals transformation. It's about finding a new identity in who I am in Jesus. It's about finding belonging in the family of God. It's about finding belonging in the place that I should be sitting as a son of the Most High King, as a daughter of the Father of all things. He begins to realize this as he experiences the good news of Jesus. And it's what leads him to write things like 2 Corinthians. It's what leads him to write things like Philippians chapter 1, when he says, in all of my prayers for all of you, I always pray with joy because of your partnership in the gospel from the first day until now. He doesn't say, I'm filled with joy because you're living perfect lives, right? He doesn't say, I'm filled with joy because I heard you have no messes, or at least you're doing a killer job of pretending like you don't have any. Like I see you on Sunday and you guys, your messes are, it's like spiritual makeup. Like I can't see any of your blemishes. That's not what he's writing. He says, I always pray with joy because of the partnership in the gospel from the first day until now. He's saying, I see what Jesus is doing in you. I see what God is doing in you because of the gospel. And he goes on and he says, I am confident of this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. This is the good news. That it's not just a chapter 1 heart transplant, forgiveness, freedom from the consequences of our sins so that we can go to heaven. It's not just that. That's true. It's that plus the next part where we actually get freedom from everything. And we live life to the full. And it's Jesus working in us through the Spirit of God to bring it to full completion. And it's why Paul could say in 2 Corinthians, and we all who with unveiled faces contemplate the Lord's glory, all of us are being transformed into his image with ever increasing glory, which comes from the Lord who is the Spirit. Friends, I think that a lot of us are living by the wrong equation. A lot of us are in a place where we believe that we have to behave our way back into the Father's good grace. We believe that this whole Jesus thing is true, but I still have to do the hardest work, which is me. I'm the hardest work. My life and the way I live and the things I do, it's the hardest work. That I'm going to behave my way back into the good graces of God. That's not our calling. That's not what it's about. What it's about is yielding to the Father's grace. It's about surrendering to the love of the Son. It's about following the leading of the Spirit. And in so doing, being transformed in the midst of our mess. My hope and my prayer for each of us is that we would find identity and belonging in Jesus, and in so doing, find transformation. And it's what leads us to this table. It's what leads us to communion as we come to a table where Jesus and his disciples sat thousands of years ago. And we sit here at this space and imagine, I want you to imagine what it would be like to sit with Jesus and to know that you belong, to know that your identity is wrapped up deeply in through who he is and what he's going to do in you. And I believe that in this room today, there are two kinds of people. Two kinds of people that I want to speak to directly today. There's actually three kinds, but two I want to address. The first is this: the people who are here that know that they still need a heart transplant. The ones who are here today and you realize, I still am carrying around all the stuff from so long ago. I'm still the guy or the girl who's just trying to cure a disease deep inside of me that is beyond my ability to cure. And you know you're sitting here today and you know that you need a heart transplant. If that's you, in a few moments, I'm going to pray. I'm just going to invite you into this space where you pray as well in the quiet of your own heart. And you just ask God. That's all you have to do. This isn't a transaction where you have to put down a down payment. There's no deductible, right, for this kind of a heart transplant. It's you saying, Jesus, I need you. Jesus, I need a heart transplant. The second group of people that I want to address today are the ones who've had a heart transplant. Long ago, maybe you had it. But ever since then, you've been trying to do it all alone. Behavior modification, outside to inside transformation. And I want to just tell you today, God didn't make it so you had to go it alone. He wants to give you the help you need, the comfort you need, the peace you need, the transformation that you need from the inside out as he works his beautiful healing inside of you, so that you would no longer have a life that is determined by the lingering effects and the collateral damage of things that you've done and the things that have been done to you. This table is where we find our identity. This table is where we find our belonging. So I want to remember that on the night that Jesus was betrayed, just before he went to the cross and did all the work that needed to be done so that we could find forgiveness, he took bread and he broke it. He said, "This is my body broken for you." And in the same way, after supper, he took this cup and he said, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood. And as often as you eat the bread and you drink the cup, you proclaim me until I come again." This is a beautiful space. And my hope is that everyone in the room would be in a place where you would be invited to eat and to drink. And the only prerequisite is this. It's a heart transplant. It's saying yes to Jesus. It's saying yes to him being in charge, yes to him being the cure for all the things that have gone wrong and we've done wrong inside of our lives. That's the prerequisite for this table. And in a few moments, the ushers are going to come and they're going to pass crackers and a little cup of juice. And we just invite you, when you're ready to eat and to drink, take some time, though, some space with Jesus. Which camp do I fall into? The one that needs a heart transplant or the one that's trying to do it on our own? Or maybe you're in group 3 where you actually feel like you've learned this and now it's your turn to teach it back. Where are you at? Beautiful thing about these crackers you're about to eat is that they're made by women in a ministry in India that our church partners with through our denomination that rescues women from sexual slavery. They've been set free, and now their job is to make bread, little rice crackers that are gluten-free so everyone can participate. They make these little crackers that represent freedom. How beautiful is that? So when you take communion today, know that this is what freedom tastes like. Freedom from all things. God wants to set us free. Would you pray with me? Jesus, we love you. So grateful, God, that you are willing to draw near to us in our mess, that our mess, no matter how bad it is, doesn't scare you away. And you come and you say, listen, I see your heart. I see that it's beyond cure. And all you have to do is ask. So right now, God, we ask, Jesus, give us a new heart. Give us a new heart today, God. And in so doing, we ask that you would forgive us for all the things we've done wrong, all the ways that our life has gotten broken and messy as a result of our own decisions. Forgive us, God. We choose you. And God, for those of us who've said that prayer, prayed that prayer dozens, hundreds of times, God, we come back to this place where we also realize that we cannot do it alone, nor were we designed to do it alone. So God, forgive us for the ways that we've been trying to slog through life all on our own, God, and help us with your Spirit to become the people, ever increasing glory, being transformed in your likeness day by day. We love you, Jesus. We thank you. We pray these things in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ, who made it all possible. Amen.